Okay, you're all set. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Now let's call to order the finance meeting for Thursday, January 12th, 6 p.m. as a remote meeting. Our first action item is approval of the minutes of the December 8th meeting.
Move to approve.
Like to make a motion to approve the minutes of the December 8th, 2022 meeting.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
I think Bill may have frozen.
Oh dear.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, he looks frozen on my screen.
Yeah. We can just bounce back to see. I'm assuming he's going to be a yes, but we could bounce back to confirm that. We have two in the affirmative. We'll just keep moving forward and hopefully he'll bounce back in. The second agenda item is discussion and possible action of the CDBC Small City Preparation and Administration bid.
Yeah,
That's a mouthful.
the Community Development Block Grant Small Cities Program. The Housing Authority wishes to apply under this program. It's a federal grant program. They've applied twice in the past for their unit rehabs for the Murphy complex, and also for Willow Street. This year they're looking to hopefully get up to $2 million from the Small Cities program. When we do this, since the program, it's quite an arduous, long, complicated process, and municipalities typically who don't have, who are not eligible for automatic grants usually hire consultants to manage, to apply for the funding and manage the program. So we went out to bid, and we received one bid from A&E Services Group LLC out of Cheshire, Connecticut. We feel the applicant is qualified. He worked for Wagner Associates for many, many years under Larry Wagner. Wagner Associates was a long standing, highly qualified firm that actually the state used consultation for this program. So we feel this firm is very qualified to handle the application and administration process. Grant came in at the proposal came in at $33,000.
And Ray, is this an item that we budgeted for, or is it a spot in the budget that we're going to utilize?
There's no money on our part, on the town's part. It's a grant. The program requires the town to be an applicant, and then we pass the money through to the Housing Authority.
So who's paying for the consulting fee?
The grant will pay for the consultant.
So we've received the grant and we're just approving this. I guess I'm a little.
If we get the grant funds will pay for the consultant.
And if we don't get the grant?
We don't do it. There's no project.
Okay.
Do you have to pay the consultant though? In
No.
that case? Okay.
No. No, this is how it works. We did it in 2012 and then 2015. No
Bill,
cost.
welcome back.
Thank you. What did I miss?
You missed our vote on approving the minutes, so we're.
I was just saying, I was holding my breath on that one.
So you're in the affirmative for the minutes.
All right. Very good.
All right, so we're 3-0 on the minutes. We're now talking about the CDBC Small City Program application.
Okay.
We don't have a motion. We're just discussing how it works.
Yep.
So Ray, I guess what I'm not understanding, or maybe I'm understanding, just don't realize how it works. We're applying for a grant, and we only pay the consultant if we receive the grant.
We being the town does not have any money in the process. The grant fund will pay the grant consultant.
And if we don't receive the grant, then there's no fee due the consultant.
Right.
Okay, that's
Okay.
a no risk process, I guess.
I mean, they are being hired to prepare the application and get the grant, so they're aware of what their expectations are.
Is it generally a high probability that you get the grant? Is that part of the process?
It is most likely, yes, you're correct. It's most likely the town will get the application, will get the grant money. But the grant allows the funding of the consultant through grant funds.
So what is the amount of the grant that we're requesting?
Up to $2 million.
Pardon?
Up to $2 million. It's the Housing Authority would like to do this to upgrade their facilities, some bathrooms, flooring.
Right.
But there is a process involved, so it's not a guarantee that the Housing Authority project will be approved. It will probably be approved, but it's not a guarantee because we have to have a public hearing, on the whole program and on the whole process and on the project. But they're looking for up to $2 million in this program and possibly another $2 million through CHFA.
So would these funds, if received, would require any match on the part of the town, Ray?
No.
No?
No.
So this seems like a significant upside and no downside moving forward with this.
Yeah, except for the tremendous amount of work that we have to do to prepare the grant. Even though we do have a consultant, it's just a tremendous amount of work. We did this in 2012. I think we received maybe a $700,000 grant, and I think similarly another $700,000 or $750,000 in 2016 for the Housing Authority.
Does there need to be any wording in the resolution that states that if the grant doesn't go through, that the consultant doesn't get $33,000 or?
No. There's no problem if the grant doesn't go through.
Al, do we make a resolution? Do we
Let's make a motion to,
Yeah. So I'll make a motion to approve the resolution as in our packets related to the CDBG Small Cities Program application preparation and program administration, and to award the bid to the consultant A&E Services Group LLC, 609 West Johnson Avenue in Cheshire, Connecticut, at a cost of $33,000, and also to give the town manager authorization to sign the contract with A&E Services for such services.
Second the motion.
any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 3-0. Moving on to item 3, update special revenue fund.
Okay, so on our special revenues, I had highlighted a couple of items, not a lot of activity in the special revenues. You'll start to see the special rec programs balance will tend to stay around this range until we start picking up with the more seasonal activities toward the end of the fiscal year. Also, just a note that on the insurance loss fund, that you've got expenditures greater than the revenues. We're still waiting a review on reimbursing for a telephone pole. I think we had that discussion before, right? And the asset forfeiture, we've got a lot of claims coming in, so you'll be seeing higher revenues coming in, hopefully within the next few months. I've been watching our correspondence from them, and the various cases are making it through their levels of approval. So it should be looking at revenues before the fiscal year end. Other than that, I think I've highlighted, we know about the ARPA. We have both tranches. I'm hoping for maybe then in February, we need to identify, even though we have this in our general fund as a source of revenue, we're still obligated for audit to reflect, some of the items that within our general fund that are ARPA related. So I'll be giving that hopefully in the next 30 days or so, perhaps bring it to finance to look at. And that's it for highlights on special revenue.
Mona, within that ARPA fund, and maybe I'm reading the right line, I'm sorry. It notes that it includes fire calls. Do we know what the breakout is of the fire calls?
Well, I can give that, maybe break it down separately, but for the most part, we've been getting, we're probably at about no, that was last month, about $8,000 of revenues in there, and they're collecting revenues at this point with no expenditures against it. So we're doing the bill out through the fire chief, and they're tending to come in like around that $2,000 per month. So it's a steady flow. And at this point, there's been no plans to do expenses from that yet. So, as you know, that's a newer process that we started doing, was the outright billing for these calls, out on the highways and so forth.
Right, and wasn't the intent to put the money aside for, I thought it was radio upgrades for the fire department?
That is probably their intent, but we still haven't accumulated to that amount. And this is where it will be set aside. It's in the fund.
Okay.
Fund 21 has a tendency to be any grants related to emergencies, fire, public safety. And because ARPA came in as emergency COVID funds, fell into that same fund. So although they're in the same fund, within that you have different project numbers within that. So I think if I could probably break down the Fund 21 into its 2 or 3 levels of detail, which will separate the fire and the ARPA.
It just may be worth noting to kind of track it, because it's a kind of a neat program. We've never been able to bill for the incidents on the highway before.
Yeah.
But it's a positive that we're able to and recoup some costs for the hard work the volunteers do. Any other questions on the special revenue?
Well, I guess I'll just echoing what you said, Alan. Also, as I understand it, there are restrictions on the fire money that's reimbursed to us as well, right? Like it needs to be specific to the fire department.
Exactly.
So I think, yes, that's another good reason to break out 21 into those subs. I think that'll be helpful going forward.
Sure.
Okay. We'll move on to item 4, update reserve for capital non-recurring expenditure fund through December 31st. I'm sorry.
Actually, we have minimal change in that. The only item that has any activity for that particular month would be in that Board of Ed, the $8,621, and that's going toward the SRO fees that we were attributing to for the schools. So it's a small amount, and you can see that was going to be the one which will be apportioned to the other unused line items above the 33,000 and the 14,000.
Okay. If there's no questions there, we'll go forward to the state aid for municipalities. Also a kind of slow period.
It is actually. December wasn't the best month for that. So we did get our Pequot money. I suppose, not to share the excitement of next month, but we did actually get our first installment of Town Aid Road the first week of January. So those were our 2 pieces if we were to go up to a month to date right now.
And Mona, how are we handling the car tax money we're supposed to get from the state, which I don't know if it's coming. Is this reflected here at all, even though it'd be 0, but
Yeah, actually it is. Well, if you look at probably the upper part where it says others, it is that municipal
vehicle.
transition motor vehicle.
okay.
So that's where we'll be watching that happen. And as you can see, we had already received that 324,000 amount. Of course, that is the amount that they had budgeted, but I think we had a conversation before that was based on prior to the supplemental. So according to what OPM had emailed in response to my question, was that supplemental billing would appear into next year's revenue source. So it's going to be more of something to watch for next year to be sure that we're going to get that amount. And as for this year, this is received as budgeted and as they had instructed that we would get. So it was based on our grand list. Grand list doesn't include anything supplemental.
And that supplemental amount, roughly how much is that? Do you have it on hand or?
Really high level rounding between 700 to 800,000.
Oh, so
It's a large amount for us. about a third of that.
Any other questions on the state aid? No. All right, monthly financial report, pre-audit.
So yes, moving right along. So overall, I have the executive summary in there for you to review. But overall, revenues are in a good standing. It's exactly where we would like them to be. In fact, with our tax revenue, which is the following page in more detail. But at this point, I mean, they're at almost 67% in comparison to the grand list, 67.4 on our 3-year benchmark. Of course, I'm going to flip a little bit to that next page about the tax revenue, would give you that $2.8 million, which is on the benchmark. Again, those tend to make us feel excited that we're 2 million ahead, but that has a tendency to be more a reflection of the cutoff periods on month end. We'll get a better picture of where we truly are after the following month's collections, when we see all of that second billing round be paid off. So December tends to get a little tricky if it's December 31st or January 1st. So although it looks very good and our collections are great, I would still, let's not spend the 2.8 million yet. Also, as far as revenues, we talked about state. So we're on track with that. Interest still going over 140,000 above what the budgeted amounts are. And then again, for the building and conveyance, percentages are doing extremely well. And for the conveyance in particular, had that one large amount that's still continuing forward in the percentages. As far as expenses, we're at 35.8% expended compared to last year's 44.2 at this time of the year. So we're about on track of where we were expecting to be. Anything to point out as any concern areas? I'd say not necessarily a concern, but to point out overtime, if you're looking on the object summary, is a bit higher, 61% compared to the prior year at this time. We've had vacancies in the dispatch, which is being covered by some overtime. So that's absorbing a piece. And although we've had a nice warm winter, we did have some highway weather incident call outs that came over the weekends that ended up with overtime.
So with the openings and dispatch, as you mentioned, where we're using overtime, will there be an offsetting reduction in the actual budgeted expense?
Yes,
for
absolutely.
So there should be somewhat of offsetting. Okay.
It will offset, yes.
Yeah.
Fuel tends to still be running high. We're watching the prices. We're trying to get a lock in for the remaining 6 months, but we're not able to communicate that well with CROG. I don't think they were doing 6-month contracts, so we'll continue to float. Fortunately, we'll be all right with that for the overall. And I guess the overall exceeding the budget will be able to be absorbed with contingency, but I'm going to still continue to watch that. If the rates go, could be an area of concern. That going hand in hand with the electric, as we know, we're expecting something very large as far as rates. We haven't seen the full month of billing on that yet, but that'll be an area that we're going to watch as well.
So even with our solar farm, there's still a considerable amount of electricity we're drawing from Eversource. Maybe a dumb question, but consumers can go to other suppliers. Still comes through Eversource, but is that ability for a town to do, or not really?
Ray made his okay. So it would be supplier versus a generation, and I mean,
Sorry,
see which is driving it. So I mean, clearly with the supplier, I believe we're bound by some contract language. And jump in, Ray, if you want to. I know you're close to that one. Oh, you muted on that one.
That was a good thing that I was muted.
Yeah. That wasn't by accident.
Solar farm is problematic, I guess, at this point, trying to get a handle and trying to wrap our arms around the whole production and virtual net metering benefits at this point. So we're still trying to untangle that web with Eversource.
Mhm.
That was
Okay.
nice.
Cause I mean, like I have solar, so I do the net metering, thing, but I can still use a different company besides Eversource to produce Eversource still delivers it, but I can use another company to purchase electricity from. I don't know if the towns can do that, like a consumer can, but
But we have I'm not sure, I'm pretty sure we have, is this the last year that of the regional consortium contract that we have? Mona, from what I remember?
For solar?
No, for
Oh.
the
Yeah,
electricity. Yeah. We'll have to,
we do know, I mean, the Board of Ed, went out and they had found another vendor, so I think but that had occurred, I think, prior to us going in this direction.
Mhm.
This is something to look into.
yeah, as far as purchasing power, we did have to purchase from Tesla. We can't change for our solar farm, but that's not an option.
no, I understand. Yeah, because you're contracted with them. But as far as when we do need to draw down from the grid, we can get from maybe like from another company besides Eversource, even though they're still delivering it, but the actual supply of it, I know from the consumer side, there's better rates than Eversource.
Yeah,
If you call Eversource, they even suggest you look for somebody else. It's kind of interesting, but
yeah, we will. I think it's a good idea to maybe contact CROG in the near future if they're working on some type of regional program that will help us, pool the costs and maybe hopefully give us something lower that we can work with.
okay.
That was it for the highlights. I was just pointing out, and you saw that maybe in my summary, that for the Board of Ed, appears to be low at the time of this going out. This has still had the October expenditures, and we'll have the current information in the following month. So we had a bit of a lag in gathering their information.
They're usually 30 days behind or 60?
We have had quite a bit of luck of keeping within 30 days behind. So I think that at times, depending on their volume of expenditures and reconciling, that we are trying to push them to have reconciled in enough time to produce a report for finance. And there are some times that they just miss it by a week or so. So, we're good with controlling our own financials and reporting and cutting things off and reconciling and so forth, but to put the pressure on them to respond and reconcile back, we're more lenient on that. They have their staff, and occasionally they just don't meet the cutoff in order to get this report.
Okay, it's kind of important to look at though, because they are more than 50% of the budget, and while we have no say in how they expend their funds, we just want to make sure that we're tracking correctly overall. And I understand the lag and the timing, but if we could push a little bit to kind of get that included for the next couple of months, it would be helpful.
Right.
So a couple counts, like 5431 equipment repair is already at 110% for the year with 6 months to go. I don't imagine that's timing necessarily. Does that concern me that's going to blow over more? Or?
Yeah, well, that in particular is going to have to be, again, go back to the department, and it'll be through some savings within the department page itself. So there are at times within the department's budget line that they may exceed, and we're expecting them to stay within their department budget page. So
Right. Yeah, and I don't know, like, this is by account, so I don't know which department is the culprit there. But say for like 5623 material supplies, it's almost 100% for the year already, with 6 months to go. So those types of things, just keep an eye on.
Oh, absolutely. We do.
No, it does. Yes.
Yeah,
I do.
not surprised.
Yeah, so if you do see some of those overages, if they have occurred, it's because they've had conversations ordinarily with me. And we've talked about, where can you make the coverage? Are you expecting something else? And so forth. There are occasions that, for example, those overtime situations where I'll mention that I don't think that if it continued at that rate, that particular page would cover it. Those are the type of things, as you see on the year-end transfers, that there may be other areas of savings that will cover that. But it was an expense that was required to move forward with operations. So we're pretty stringent. I think I am.
Sounds good.
I mean, overall, it looks like we're in line with where we expect to be halfway through the process.
Yes.
And Jeff, 100% certain lines, you have some fluctuation. That's kind of normal to timing. But it's always good that we're checking and looking.
Mhm.
And, we got 6 months left and from this report, so got to keep it in line for the next 6 months because we don't have a lot of flexibility.
We don't. In the following month, and I believe we have seen this in the budget process, but it's my intention to have columns put in that will give a projection and give us, at least from the department level, the object level, again, because it's blending various departments together, but at least for a department level to give some type of a projection of where we are. Myself and staff are working on that already because we want to make sure that we don't end up with something at the end of the year that we're not prepared for.
Mhm. And I'll just say, hopefully that'll be different than during the budget process where everybody tells us they're going to use 100% of their budget.
It will be different in that this will be something that's generated from finance and looking at prior year spending trends, where we were last year on this particular line item. If our expectations are to continue at that rate, where would we be? And then going back and scouring through those and finding out if there were one-time purchases and keeping that to mind when the projections created. So yes, I've seen that as well, that the departments think they promise by the end of the year they're going to spend everything and leave nothing, and that's not the best projection for us to close with.
Any other questions on the monthly financial report? Okay. Do we have anything for other?
I do not.
No, I think I was just going to mention on the tax sale that we went through the demand notice process, and we are now going forward. We had one account that made payment plans, so all others we're going to go through with putting them on the auction process. So we did go forward on the next level for the tax sale.
And how many properties are
We have 12 that will go for the auction.
How many did we have originally?
We had a couple that were, I think it was an open space that came off. I think we had started with 16. One made a payment plan and another came off because of open space so.
Yeah.
okay?
And another, I think, was same owner, so it consolidated.
And do you have a target date for doing the tax sale?
We're hoping to still stay with our original plan, which would be for it being in April. And it looks like we are still going to make that doable. Yeah, we just want to stay away from getting too close to the fiscal year end and have collections fall into the following fiscal year. I'd like to see the benefit of that happen in this year as
Okay.
budgeted.
And what's the total arrears on those 12 properties, Mona, that are up for auction?
It was 260,000 roughly. I don't know the total of the one that made the payment plan. So we're one account less off of the 260.
Okay.
Okay. All right. If there's nothing else, I entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone.
See you next week. Good night.